Hey, I still don't have an intro, but welcome back. Today, I'm going more in depth about songwriting because last time I think I was just trying to go with the flow. This time, I've made notes about what to talk about. First of all, songwriting is something that is going to take time. It is always going to change. It's the same with making music in general. No matter what you're doing with music in general, you always suck at the start. You always start at the very bottom. When you pick up a new instrument, you don't even know what letters or what notes each string is, what key you're pressing. It's the same thing. When you start singing, when you start playing a new instrument, when you start producing, when you start writing, just know that all your first handful of songs, or maybe even hundreds of songs, are going to be terrible. You're gonna hate them. Can't let that stop you from continuing to write. If you know that you want to learn how to songwrite and that you love songwriting, or that is just the thing you know you want to do, then don't stop doing it no matter what, because you're going to write the worst things. Like, you know when you hear your favorite artist talk about, oh yeah, I wrote like 300 songs for this album, but only 12 made it. You're like, bro, why don't you release the rest of those songs, blah, blah, blah. Probably either didn't even finish completely writing them, or they literally thought the words on them sucked. Like, that's just how it is. You're going to write so many different songs and you're gonna hate them, and you're not gonna end up using a lot of them. I've had this songwriting book since my freshman year of high school, and literally I think only 5 songs at most I genuinely finished and like in this whole book. And I'm saying that when I've literally written in practically every page. Like, there's like, I think a couple random blank ones I have, but I've basically written in almost every page of this.
The 2 first songs I ever wrote are in here. I say 2 because one of them, it's just lyrics. The second one I wrote, that was only written 2 months after the first one, was my very first one that I wrote with a track, my own original track. The very, very first song I wrote was called To Be All Yours. It was just written with a YouTube track. They're really basic lyrics.
I only wrote 2 verses and a chorus. Literally what I wrote it about was this crazy intense crush that I had on this guy. That leads me into where I think a good place to start is for any beginner songwriter. Love. Literally write anything about love, because majority of the music out there is about love in so many different ways. When you think about the topic of love, there are so many things that fall under it. One of the first things you can do, think about your love life. Think, where am I in my love life right now? Am I in a happy relationship? Am I in a bad relationship? Am I single and happy right now? Am I single and yearning for someone right now? So many different things you can think of when you just simply think about your love life. Then you can start writing about that. You can even write about a love life that you want. This is the 2 main things about when you write a song. You're either writing about your personal life, or you're completely making up a story, or you're kind of writing a third person point of view story. You're writing your lyrics on a true story, but it's not about your own personal self. You could be writing about your friend or your worst enemy. I don't know. You could be writing about any true story, either from your personal point of view or anyone else's, and or you can completely make a story up. Me personally, I completely struggle with writing about a complete fictional story. I need a personal connection with my music. I'm not saying I'm not able to collaborate with other people, because I think I've gotten better over time of expanding on other people's stories, even if they're not personal or relatable to me. But I think the thing that I have yet to do is just completely make up a story. First, I think you can start with, I'm not saying this is what you have to start with. You can start anywhere with songwriting. It doesn't matter. But I think for a complete beginner that's like, genuinely, where do I start? Like, you don't have to go with this outline, but if you really have no idea where to start, I recommend think either, am I gonna write this about my own self, or am I going to talk about someone else's life, or am I gonna completely just make something up? And either way, you can combine things. You can talk about your own life. It also includes a friend's story, or you can make something up but also have things about your own life. It doesn't matter, but just choose at least a main thing for now, because it's your very first time writing, if it is, and just choose one of those 3. Then I recommend either you can choose whatever topic you want, but I'm going with love for the example because I think it's the easiest. Think about your love life. Think about any of those specific things. Then start thinking, how exactly do I feel about that? For my example, I'm going to say, I'm single and happy right now. What am I going to write? Well, how do I feel about being single and happy? I like being independent. I like not having to worry about someone else's needs or blah, blah, blah. Just start thinking about those. And even then, if you don't think you can remember all those things, write them down. Either you can write them physically or you can write them on your phone. You can type them out. Just write down these ideas somewhere. And you don't necessarily have to write the song at the moment, but write those ideas down or those feelings down so you can look back on it later and then start thinking of lyrics. Or if you think, I can start digging on my feelings right now and coming up with lyrics, whatever works for you. In a way, with this, I'm kind of walking you through my writing process because my process is writing based on my intense emotions. If you're like me and you write based off of intense emotions, what I do is kind of trick myself sometimes because
I will want to write a new song and I will have the ability to write my new piano melody, or I find this YouTube track where I really like how it sounds but I can't think of words. I'll try to choose a random situation in my life that I know causes me an intense emotion when I think deeply about it or I think back on it, and then I'll kind of just get in my head about it, and then I'll start feeling that emotion again. You can either do that and you can just wait until you have an intense emotion about something and start writing about it, or you can do what I do and think of a specific memory. I think writing about a specific memory can also be easier for a beginner because I know I struggle with writing metaphors or painting a picture for my listener, and I think if you think about a specific memory, you're visualizing it yourself. You're trying to remember every little detail about that memory. You can either act like you're explaining that memory to someone too and just write a big paragraph about it. It doesn't even have to be a poem so far or lyrics. Literally just start describing and talking about that lyric specifically. Or sometimes what I've done is record myself talking about a specific thing and then I'll listen back on it, pick out words, and I'm like, well, that sounded like a lyric that I just said. Sometimes you'll unintentionally just speak about something and you'll be saying a lyric accidentally. Either record yourself talking about a memory or write it all down and then look back on it, try to find random sentences or lines that you wrote and you're like, that sounds like a lyric, or it just sounds very poetic to you, or it sticks out to you, or find details that you talked about that are to do with the five senses. Also think about that when you're describing the memory. Think about every little detail. What did that memory feel like? What did it smell like? What did you hear during that memory? What did you see during that memory? Use all your senses when talking about that memory. I want to go back on when I said that you'll randomly think of a lyric. Not necessarily when you're talking about a memory. I mean, obviously that can happen too, but your thoughts in the middle of the day can be a lyric, genuinely. At first, when you're first starting to songwrite, you're not going to catch that, you're not going to think that, but if you are having a moment, for example, where you're in the middle of a boring class and you're just sitting there and you're zoning out, thinking about random stuff, right? I'm gonna be real about my example because I think it's a good example. So there's this guy that sits next to me in one of my classes that I find so boring, and it's the longest class I have in my schedule. I tend to zone out sometimes. I'm still staring and paying attention, but I'm still thinking a bunch of things in my head because I'm a huge thinker anyway. So I'm over here sitting in this class and I'm looking at the board and I'm zoning out a little bit. This guy that sits next to me, he looks nothing like this person that I think about. I realized when I was sitting there and from the corner of my eye in my pref roll, he has this kind of barely similar outfit that this person that I know would wear, or he has barely similar hair to this person that I think about. Let me make this easier to explain. I'm gonna say that this person I was thinking about, I'm gonna call this person Matt. Okay, so I'm trying to paint this dude that sits next to me as Matt. I'm like, what are you doing? I noticed in that moment, I'm like, stop painting that person as Matt. You're not gonna see him on campus. It's not gonna happen. Then I started thinking about whenever I'm walking around anywhere or I'm in public and I see these people that look similar to Matt, and I'm like, stop doing that.
You need to stop painting every stranger you see as Matt. You need to stop painting this person next to you as Matt. It's not him. And in that moment, I thought this lyric that I'm gonna have on the screen right now because I don't remember what I said. But I thought that, and I wrote it down right away because I already had my paper in front of me. Then I literally went to a practice room right after that class and I expanded on those lyrics and that idea. I didn't continue writing the song about painting every person as Matt, but I started thinking that would go well with the feeling of missing a person so much. That's what I ended up doing. I didn't finish writing that song yet, but I know I probably will because I really like what I've made so far. So that is my example and literal proof that you can think of lyrics in the middle of the day with random thoughts that you have, even if they're not intended to be lyrics. If you're a huge thinker like me, or you're just in your head about something or someone or a situation, you can make it into a lyric. You kind of just have to have an instinct to catch it. Even if you think a certain thought and you're like, I want to write that down, and later on you look at it and you're like, that can never be a lyric. Like, what was I thinking? At least you were thinking, because you had the intention of trying to catch the thoughts you have. It's better to write those down even if you don't use them. It's the same thing as just writing a bunch of terrible songs, because you at least got the idea out. You are at least practicing, and then you're able to improve later on when you want to take it more serious. Now I want to talk about other methods that I know of for writing, but I don't necessarily use because I just know that they're not the best for me or that I don't work well with them. First one, making your song title first. It just gives you an idea and it gives you a point to start on. I think this method doesn't work for me because I feel like I'm limiting myself and forcing myself to stick with the topic, but I think for a beginner it would help to stick and try to box yourself into one topic, because for a beginner you can probably panic, like, what do I write about? Like, I don't know what to focus on. I think if you try to come up with your title first, you can definitely narrow down what you're gonna write about. An example for this, just like I said earlier with love, think about your love life, what you want to write about, specifically about love, and coming up with the title. You're thinking, I am single and I really want to be in a relationship right now, blah, blah, blah. A good example of that is People Watching by Conan Gray. I don't know how he wrote that song, but look at the title, People Watching. When you're single and you're looking at all these other couples and you are wanting that, you're people watching. Think of titles like that, then you can expand and start writing stories about that title. Another method that you can do is coming up with a completely fictional story. This is also another method that I just cannot do. There's people that are complete opposite of me and they're able to only write about fictional stories and not their own personal life. It just depends, and this is why you need to practice writing a bunch of different songs with a bunch of different methods and find your method, because that's what I did all throughout high school. I didn't figure out what my proper writing process was until I basically graduated high school. I had been writing since freshman year. As I was saying, with writing fictional stories, you think,
my life is really boring right now. I have nothing to write about.
Okay, start thinking about, what do you want currently in your life right now? Is there a dream that you're chasing after? Think about all these different things that you want in life and start from there. You can act like you just received that thing that you want, even if you didn't in the moment. You can still write about that, just pretend. With my love example again, because it's just the easiest example, like I said, you can think, well, I really want to be in a relationship right now. You can start writing about a fictional story, acting like you are in that relationship and acting like you do have that significant other. You can start imagining what that feeling is like, and then you can start writing about that. So those are like the methods I know. Now, just general things that you should know about songwriting. I cannot stress it enough. Just write whatever you want. No matter how terrible you think the lyric is, just keep writing. Even if you never look at those pages again or never look at those specific notes on your notes app of that song that you wrote, at least you have the practice of writing. Think about the 5 senses. Think about how you can paint the picture for your audience. Taste, smell, hearing, seeing, and touch. I almost forgot the 5 senses. Then another thing, metaphors. That is something I personally struggle with, but if you use metaphors a lot, think about those when you're writing because they are useful. They're the most common things found in music, especially because you don't want to be basic. You just want to start comparing your feelings to a metaphor. I think those are all the things, all the methods and tips that I have for songwriting. I can't stress enough, if you really want to songwrite, just don't stop writing. No matter how much you hate the lyrics, or even if you turn out loving random ones that you write, just keep writing.